Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 6. Chapter 78. I'll be back in an hour or so, I have some things to take care of in the office. Okay. Quinn looked back at him as he walked towards the door. If you don't mind me asking, where is my father? He's in the spare room beside Isabella's. If he's not there, then he's somewhere with Nick. All right, I'll see you later then, and if you're not back in an hour like you said, I'm coming to your office. You'd better not, or better yet, I implore you to come. It'd be yet another place where I do you until your legs shake. You? Quinn pointed at him. Where is your shame? Zade laughed as he stepped through the door. I don't know, the goddess didn't create me with any. Quinn flipped him off, but before he closed the door, he looked at her seriously. On my way back, I'll check with the elders, I need an auspicious date for the ceremony. Quinn nodded, and that's when Zade closed the door, walking down with his hands in his pockets. He never meant to lie, but in this case, he had to. If it were up to him, then he'd be holding the ceremony tonight, but it'd ruin his plans. His mate was supposed to be Delilah. If he had the ceremony now, then word would spread, and it would undoubtedly reach Alpha Jake's ears. That fool would find out that he was being tricked, and the vengeance he promised Gio would be a myth only his mind could tell. Quinn couldn't know the truth. She couldn't know that that was the real reason why the ceremony could not be held yet. He knew she'd feel disappointment and distrust in him, he knew she'd be angry. But despite knowing that, Gio had to experience some form of penalty for his deeds. For Zade to feel happy, he had to experience pain, an end that he deserved, a destruction that would be as bitter as gall. He didn't care how hurt she'd be, he was taking revenge for her. Nobody could step all over his mate and still have feet left. Catherine especially, he wanted to finish her off himself, he'd promised to, and he would. Zade stepped out of the pack house, opening the mind link between him and his two most trusted stupids. Meet me at my office in 3 seconds. Dante responded first. Don't you think 3 seconds is a little, unrealistic? Frederick next. I'm in the middle of a game, you'd better wait for 5 minutes. Zade rolled his eyes. Now, both of you. He made it to his office a minute after closing the mind link and, as expected, they weren't there as yet. He shook his head and opened the door, taking a seat behind his desk. A minute more passed before they both filed in, Dante sitting on the edge of the desk and Frederick leaning against the door. I was winning, man. Nobody cares, there are more important things at hand. Such as? Like the fact that the mating ceremony I've wanted since meeting Quinn is being postponed because of that fool. Technical, he didn't do anything, not this time. Frederick clarified. It's all on you. Zade squinted towards him. Shut your mouth. As you wish, sir. He pursed lips, looking back down at his phone. I want the plans to start taking effect. I thought Jake would be eager enough to strike already. Was I wrong? Does he not care about being the best anymore? Has his pride healed? I doubt it. Damien picked up a paper from the desk. He's too arrogant to ever give up on such a dream. He will strike, and soon. And then he'll come here, holding that redhead as hostage to hurt you. He'll stand right behind the borders with a couple of his tropes like you predicted, and he'll demand a rematch. We just have to be patient, he's perfecting his plan, so even if water spills in the wrong direction, he won't shrivel up like a piece of paper. I know that, but I still think something is off. He's the type to fire without thinking, to pull the trigger without looking if it's pointed at his own head. Something just doesn't feel right. You're just overthinking it, you're probably just anxious. I'm not, I haven't even been thinking about it that much, but the fact that he hasn't done anything yet is alarming. I know he'd been scheming, looking for a way to get me to cave, and now he has one, and he isn't jumping at it. What if I did the wrong thing? What if something goes wrong? I thought about it on my way here, what if he has a plan that will clash with mine? He doesn't, I assure you of that. Zade nodded. All right, I'll trust you on this one. I might actually be overthinking it, but as Alpha, I'm trying to evaluate every possibility and have a counter for each, just in case things go south. Jake might not be the Alpha King now, but he used to be the king for a reason. We know that, but we also know he has nothing on you. Quinn is here, there's nothing he can do that can get you to falter, right, Frederick? Frederick didn't look up from his phone, and Dante chuckled. That asshole, he must be texting Lila or something. Let him be, he hasn't seen her in a while. Zade tapped his desk. Tell Garth to find out what's happening, and also announce special training for the warriors, just in case push comes to shove. You are in charge of the training, and Frederick can be a substitute. All right, I'll do that to satisfy your needless worry. Frederick, let's go. As they walked out the office, he looked down the paper Dante had in hand. What if the water spilled in his direction? Would he shrivel up? Zade shook his head with a small chuckle. No, Jake couldn't contend with him, not in this lifetime. As they walked out of the office, Zade looked down at the paper Dante had in hand. What if the water spilled in his direction? Would he shrivel up? He shook his head with a small chuckle. No, Jake couldn't contend with him, not in this lifetime. Back then, a year ago when Zade had challenged him, he had the biggest mouth. His words were proud, and his ego was high. He believed he'd win, he'd been so conceited that he threw himself into the battle without observing and analyzing Zade's strength. He'd fought blindly, and Zade had effortlessly shown him that one should never underestimate their opponent. Zade wasn't trying to do the same, underestimating an opponent was never something he'd done. However, he'd already evaluated that man, and Zade knew he was absolutely no match for him. Glancing away from the paper, he stood to his feet, but just then, Garth busted through his door. Last night, he breathed out. It happened last night. Zade squinted at the panting man, it seemed as though he'd run here. What did? Alpha Jake, he finally attacked. He has Delilah, and according to the news, his pack murdered more than half of Giovanni's. That Alpha, Giovanni, is critically injured as well. The news is spreading on the streets rather rapidly, it got to me a little late, I'm sorry about that. It has already made it into the city, people are talking down on Giovanni, saying they knew he was weak and cowardly, but not this much. Apparently, the Omega that was taken is pregnant with his child. Zade sat back down in his seat. It's all right. Did you hear anything else? No, not really, but you're a part of the scandal as well. The rumors I'd spread about that girl being your mate had collided with this one. People are condemning you for having a mate that's pregnant for somebody else, and for also leaving her unprotected enough for Alpha Jake to gain possession of her. They are labeling you wrongly. That's exactly what I wanted. You may go, continue being my eyes and ears, let me know everything that happens from now on. Garth nodded. Okay, Alpha, I'm glad I could be of help. He walked through the door, and Zade reopened the mind link between him and his Beta and Gamma. My office, what man? We just left. Frederick's right, you play too much. It's serious now, you were right Dante, I was worried for nothing. What do you mean? He took the bait last night, Delilah is now in his hands and Geo's pack massively decreased in size. Garth heard that he's badly injured too. I finally got what I wanted, but now I have to prepare for the aftermath. Get the men ready, he'll be here sooner or later, but before that, before Quinn knows about all of this, I want the ceremony to be held. It's selfish, but it'd be harder for her to run away when she's now marked as my Luna. Get the pack ready for that too, early tonight, just in case Jake decides to strike. On it. Dante responded through the link. Frederick, strengthen the border protection, gather some of our best men and have them patrol tonight, nothing can go wrong. As you wish. And by the way, you don't need to come to my office anymore. We weren't going to come, not after making it this far. Zade cut the link, looking off at nothing in particular. His worry was all in vain. Jake has not changed. The only regret he has was not getting the chance to watch as Geo was getting humiliated. Geo sat in his room, lost in deep and consuming thoughts. Things were going worse than he thought they would. His pack had fallen deeper into despair, especially since he was not up against one enemy but two. The Alpha King had turned his back on him, but the prior Alpha King was looking in his direction. Another big enemy, but this time he did nothing to provoke them. They'd found him on their own, using him as bait to catch a bigger fish. How did he end up in such a situation? His pack was close to complete destruction, and was it all his fault? Geo ran his hand down his face, looking across the room. The injuries on his body were yet to heal, he'd almost died in a fight last night. But he'd not only lost a battle, but also everything else. It started with Quinn, and now he'd lost something he didn't even want, Delilah. God, what was really happening? He could barely explain all of this. He was at the mercy of someone he knew he couldn't beat, thus why he was this miserable. His pack barely saw him as an alpha now, they didn't regard him as someone stronger than them, after all, he was just as weak. He'd seen his pack members being slaughtered in front of him, and he couldn't do anything about it. How pitiful, he had been embarrassed and beaten on his own lands. Geo groaned in pain as he stood to his feet, walking over to the window and peering down at what was below. He could see the lifeless bodies scattered on the earth a distant away. The sun had destroyed the darkness, showing him exactly how much he'd lost in the span of one night. Delilah, the woman who was carrying his child, was as in front of him, and though he did not love her, it hurt his pride. She'd cried and begged him for help, and the fact that he couldn't had broken his ego and eaten it up. It was Alpha Jake who'd done it. It was a punishment, he'd said, a punishment for being a whore, for getting marked by someone other than him. He'd caged her against the grass in the woods, in front of his men and geos, and laughed as he tore off her clothes. A worthless whore is what the goddess gifted me? Amusing. And then he beat her even more mercilessly than Geo. Her wails and her tears seemed to have turned him on, it definitely had been what kept him going. He felt so helpless in all of this. If he couldn't do anything now, then what would he do when they successfully managed to capture Quinn? Zade walked back to the pack house, finding Quinn and her father seated on the bench just outside. They were corresponding calmly, though it seemed a little awkward from his perspective. He stopped in front of them, nodding in greetings towards her father and patting Quinn's shoulder. "Meet me upstairs when you're done, I have something to tell you." "Okay," she responded, and he made his way inside, entering his room. He laid back against the bed with a long sigh. At first, he'd been angry that her father came here, but it didn't turn out as bad as he thought it would. She'd cried, yes, but it seemed she was over it now, and he was glad that at least one of her close relatives was on her side. As for Delilah, she was right where she deserved to be. In the hands of a man who probably had her ruthlessly tied up in his dungeons. Zade scoffed at that thought as he twisted onto his side. He needed to prepare for tonight, and he wasn't talking about the battle. The ceremony, that was at the forefront of his mind. He needed to get his suit ready, no, overall, he needed to get himself ready, physically and mentally. He'd been waiting for this for so long, and now that it was finally happening, he was honestly overjoyed. But he was worried about the outcome of his plan, worried about what Quinn would do if she ever found out that he was the mastermind behind her old pack's destruction. The way he'd strategized the plan left no evidence of that, but what if her father were to tell her that he saw Dante and Frederick burning the farm down? Zade ran his hand down his face, looking towards the door when it was suddenly opened, revealing Quinn. "You're done already?" Quinn nodded as she walked inside. "Yeah, we'd been chatting since you left. What is it that you wanted to tell me?" She climbed onto the bed, laying her head against his chest. "As I told you before I left, I'd stop and have a chat with the elders. Today was the day they gave me, what's more is that there'll even be a full moon tonight." "Yeah? I'm a little nervous," Zade chuckled. "I knew you'd be, but it'll be fine, I promise. Everything will be fine." "I know, everything will be fine as long as you're there. That's why I'm not panicking. If you accept me, then your pack obviously will too. And whoever doesn't will be killed or put out." "That's a little harsh, it should be. What color are you wearing?" Quinn shrugged. "I bought a white dress the last time Marcia took me shopping, I could wear that. Then I'll wear a white suit. By the way, did you open the gifts you got from everyone?" "No, not yet. I was going to open them when you got back." "Why?" Just because what?" Zade ran his fingers through her red hair soothingly. "I know you won't tell me, so why did I even ask?" Quinn shrugged and Zade sighed. "Are you ready to open them now?" "Yeah." She sat up, shuffling off the bed. "Let's get it over with." Zade followed her to her room where about 6 gifts were spread out across the bed, and one by one, Zade watched as Quinn opened them all. Marcia's gift was first, and in it was a purse she lied about picking up for herself at the store. Isabella's gift was nothing but a $5 diary that Quinn probably would never use. She didn't write much, but since this was a gift, she'd try. Raven's gift was a cute, black scarf with grey dog prints on it. And that was it for the women's gifts. On to the men. Nicholas's gift was an eyeliner with a note saying, "Marcia uses this thing every day. Happy birthday." Frederick's gift was a small pocket knife, definitely for self-defense. The handle was wooden and had pretty carvings on it. She'd put it to good use. And Dante's gift was just the most awful one. It was a pack of 12 extra-large Durex condoms, which Zade yanked from her hands and threw across the room. He said they wouldn't be needing them and that he'd stuff them one by one down Dante's throat when he found him. It had been funny, especially when he said he'd also fit some of them over his head. After that, they'd laid down together and talked about stuff that wasn't at all important, until Zade said he had to go out a little for training, taking the box of condoms with him. Quinn had sat down in her room after he left, hanging onto the necklace Zade had given her as well as the ring her father just now handed to her, the very last piece of her mother that was left. What must she choose to do? Who was most important to her? Mate or family? The night drifted down to touch the trees a little sooner than Quinn had expected it to. The preparations for the ceremony were made, food and drinks were being served, and the pack was merry. In all of this, Quinn stood in her room, wearing her white dress. Zade had already left, but she didn't get to see him. Marcia had cruelly forbidden them from seeing each other. She said it'd be a lot more sensational to meet when the ceremony began. While that was probably true, she'd wanted to see him in that white suit he said he'd wear. A hug or two would have been nice before the ceremony too, but there would always be time after, right? Her hair and makeup, which was done by Marcia, was simple and yet beautiful, and so was her dress. It was an off-shoulder design that wafted against her ankles, and she wore a flowery, block-heel shoes along with it. She was ready, but there was one thing she had to do before the ceremony. She needed to talk to her father again, to decline his cry for help. She didn't want to tell him no, but considering the circumstances, she had to. He told her to meet him in the heart of the woods, and instead of having him wait for her in vain, she was going there to tell him that her decision was to stay. Taking a deep breath, she walked out the door. Would he be disappointed? Would the way he viewed her change? Quinn shook her head. It didn't matter. She was not obligated to give up herself as sacrifice for someone who wouldn't do the same for her. Her steps took her out the east wing of the pack house, and she tried her best to remain unseen as she wandered off into the woods. Since her sense of smell was gone, it was hard to locate him, but he found his way to her. He was wearing a black suit, one that might have been given to him by Nicholas. "Are you ready?" he asked. Quinn shook her head. "I'm sorry, Dad, but about what we spoke about earlier, I can't. If you were the one being held hostage, then I would have definitely considered it, but Delilah? Delilah betrayed me, and how will I save her when I don't even have a wolf? You don't need to fight. He won't hurt you, but he will hurt Delilah if you don't show up tonight. He just needs you to lure Zade out. He promised me that after that, he'll set both of my daughters free." "And you believed him?" "He won't set neither me nor Delilah free. he'll kill her and me and probably you too. He wants to retake his position from Zade, and he intends to use me to do it. If I go willingly, then I'd be betraying Zade, and I won't do that since I for one knows exactly how betrayal feels." Quinn twisted away from her father, and he desperately grabbed onto her hand. "Please Quinn, she's your sister, your family, save her. Why hadn't she thought of that when she was sneaking around with my mate? Why hadn't she thought of that when she was colluding with Catherine to poison me? Why must I save her when she wants me dead?" Quinn yanked her arm out of his. "I'm not going, I can't save her while sacrificing myself. You know what might happen, and asking me to do it anyway is cruel, father. I just realized it now, but Zade is really the only person I can trust." She lifted her dress and started her walk back into the open. Earlier in the morning, after Zade left for the office, she went to find her father, to catch up, to rebuild their bond, but what she got instead was him asking her for help. You see, he didn't really come here to celebrate her birthday, he came here for an entirely different reason, one that burnt Quinn's chest. He said because of her, a lot of terrible things would happen, and if he didn't bring her back with him, then Delilah's life would be in grave danger. 5 days, he said, that's all he got to save her, and this was close to the last one. The threat he got was not a shallow one. If he was unable to bring her back within 3 days, then the Silver Moon Pack would be attacked, and when the 5th day ended, then the prior Alpha King would break Delilah's neck. And Derek told her that 3 days had already passed. Then did that mean the pack was already attacked? But then again, how was he so sure that the Alpha wasn't just playing tricks on him? And even if he wasn't, then he chose the wrong person to hold as hostage because Quinn would not risk her life to save Delilah's, and she would not be used to put Zade in danger either. A fight should be fair, and if she was going to be a part of it, then it was I'm sorry, Quinn. Quinn opted to turn at the sound of her father's voice, but before she could, his hand slammed into her neck and her body tensed all over, becoming paralyzed. Her eyes fluttered shut as she fell forwards, hitting the grass that had once been beneath her feet. Derek looked down at her and then at the hand he'd used to harm her. I'm sorry, Quinn, but this has to be done. Zade will save you, but who will save your sister? He reached down to pick up her lifeless body, and just then, an Omega came out of hiding. Larna, that was her name he believed, the spy Alpha Jake said would be here to help him. It is done, you have to hurry or else you will get caught. Derek nodded, placing Quinn in Larna's arms as he transformed into his wolf. Brown fur coated his skin swiftly, and he now stood on 4 feet and not 2. The Omega situated Quinn on his back then, and he sped off into the woods, looking up at the sky when the lightning flashed. He forgot all about it, but the rain would fall heavily tonight. The ceremony should have never been held, he wouldn't have captured Quinn this easily if everybody weren't busy having a blast. The patrolmen had easily been taken down, Larna was trusted here, so anything she gave them, they'd unsuspectingly drink it. This was wrong, but despite everything, both of his daughters deserved to live. They were all he had left, and only Zade could save them both. As the little drops of rain started to fall from the sky, Zade looked through the crowd for Quinn. It was finally time and Marcia had gone to her room to get her. He felt more impatient now than ever, to see her, to touch her, and the bliss he was trying to hide showed so blatantly in his uncontrollable smile. Quinn was about to be rightfully his. The happiness he felt was something he couldn't even explain. His heart was beating heavily, like a drum, and anticipation was trying its best to kill him. He couldn't wait for her to bless the crowd with her beauty, to light up this dark night like a beetle. Every step she'd make would wreck him wonderfully, and when she was finally in his arms he'd crumble and fold. God damn it! It had been so hard to keep his distance before the ceremony, but now he was kind of glad he did. If he'd seen her before, then he wouldn't be this excited to see her now. He knew she'd look beautiful, but to what extent, he was clueless. Goddess, that angel would surprise even him when she finally stepped on these grounds, or so he'd thought until his eyes found Marcia rushing through the crowd alone. She stepped up on the podium, approaching him with an unreadable expression on her face, and then she leaned in to whisper in his ears. Quinn is not here, she is gone. At the sudden declaration, Zade's eyes widened, and he staggered back. The beat of his heart quickened again, but this time in petrification. What? Calm down, Zade, everybody's watching. What do you mean gone? She isn't anywhere here, and neither is her father. Zade's blood ran cold immediately, and he pushed his mother aside, rushing off the podium. What did she mean by Quinn is not here? What could she mean? The sound of thunder clapped above, and the tiny drops of rain got bigger and heavier, hitting the ground hard and fast. The pack members scattered, all searching for shelter, but not him. His eyes were searching for something else, for her. As they wandered around aimlessly, tears disguised as the rainwater that showered his body dripped down his cheeks. Did she run away again? From all of his, from him, was it too much for her? Was she not ready? If so, then why hadn't she said something? Why hadn't she? Zade. Zade heard his name, but he was too deep in sorrow to answer, so focused on the thoughts that wanted to drown him that reality was but a blur to him. Someone grabbed his shoulders, shaking him back to the real world, and only then did he realize that Dante and Frederick were standing in front of him. She was kidnapped, the patrol men are all unconscious, somebody drugged them. We need to get to work and quick, it's raining, if we don't start the search now, then the water will wash away every trace of her. Zade heard, but it was almost as though he didn't. Kidnapped? Yes, regain your composure, man. Dante squeezed his shoulders. I know how you feel, but if we don't start the search now, it'll be harder to find her. Zade nodded, swallowing as he opened up the mind link between him and Rachel. Get the trackers ready, you're leading them. Yes, Alpha, she responded. He closed the link and looked at Dante. Handpick a few more strong warriors to accompany us. Dante nodded, doing as told, and when the trackers arrived and the warriors followed them, Zade transformed into the black fur of his wolf and the white suit he'd worn before laid in pieces on the floor just like his heart. He should have known this wouldn't have ended well. The sky was dark, and rain on such a day was bad luck from the very beginning. Maybe he should have taken her to the ceremony himself instead of listening to Marcia, and maybe he should have killed her dad the very night he showed up here. He was at fault, for everything that happened to her, he was at fault. Zade sprinted off into the woods when the trackers did, following them into the night with a heavy heart. He didn't know why this was happening or why her father would ever do such a thing, but he'd find out. He'd also find out who drugged his men as well, because he knew Derek couldn't have done it. His men weren't stupid enough to just drink anything, even on a night like this. Somebody here, somebody trustworthy had given it to them. Nevertheless, finding who wasn't his priority right now, finding Quinn was. Her scent was already weak due to the loss of her wolf, and the rain made it much harder for him to scent her out. He couldn't smell anything but the trees and the wet dirt, and he was trying so hard to. "Rachel, what are you getting?" "It's faint, but I've got a trace of her father too. His scent is stronger, but it's gradually weakening as well." Zade would have believed her father had been kidnapped too if there was the scent of another. But as Rachel said, it was just his scent and Quinn's that freshly tainted the path they were on. "Good, move faster." The wolves in front as well as the ones behind him skidded effortlessly into the mud, only stopping hours later when the trace Rachel had been following disappeared completely. She turned to him, shaking her head. "The rain is too heavy, I can't, it's gone." Zade knelt down, changing forms. "Try again, Rachel," Alpha I said to try again. Rachel nodded, leaning down to sniff the earth. She moved around, turning towards him when she was done scenting everything out. "I'm sorry, Alpha, I have failed you. There's an intersection ahead. If we'd been quicker, then we would have known which road they'd taken." Zade ran his hand down his face. "Let's split up, Dante Frederick, lead one team, Rachel, you're with me." And so, they ran in two different directions and yet met back up empty-handed when the sun barely started to rise. Zade didn't understand this. How could she have been taken right under his nose? He'd pledged to protect her, and look what he'd done instead. A breath of frustration left his lips as he looked back at his pack members. First, he needed to travel to her old pack, and if that wasn't where he'd taken her, then he'd know for a fact that Derek had taken his mate straight to his enemy. And then would be when the old him would resurface. When Quinn woke up, she found herself lying on an unfamiliar forest floor with her hands and feet tied. Unfamiliar men surrounded her, all sitting around a blazing fire that granted them warmth after what seemed to be a heavy rain. Quinn's eyes assessed them all, finalizing with a count of 7 men, excluding her father, who was knelt before one of them. His face was bloodied and bruised as though he'd just got beaten, and his hands were beneath his chin. "Please," he begged. "You'll have to beg a little harder than that, old man." The man he knelt before smirked, a conniving smirk that matched the profane look on his face. Quinn didn't have an enhanced sense of smell, but even without it, she knew this man was powerful. His eyes were nothing but a pool of darkness beneath the rising sun. The evil, it was all so prominent in his eyes. "It sounds like you aren't desperate, don't you want your life?" "No, I do, I want it. Please, I'm begging you to let me live. I did as told, I brought you my daughter. Let me live." "Well, I suppose you did do well." He dug his hand into his pocket, taking out a small, white capsule and throwing it the furthest it could go. "Fetch puppy." Quinn's eyes widened when her father immediately crawled after what he'd thrown, shoving it into his mouth and swallowing. How could father willingly allow himself to be degraded like that? How could he beg this man who was certainly Zade's enemy for his life? Her father hadn't just betrayed her, he betrayed his own self and ignored his own teachings. He'd been the one who taught her to never cave, to uphold her pride, and now it seemed as though he had none. Tears graced her eyes as she struggled to sit up, but with her hands and feet tied, all she could do was wiggle on the earth like a worm. Father! How could you do this to me? How could you do this to yourself? Untie me, Derek looked at her, but he did not answer. However, the shame in his eyes spoke for itself. Anybody else but you, Dad, why would you do this to me? Her voice broke as she spoke, and the obsidian-eyed man seemed to find that amusing, for he chuckled in delight. You're awake, I see, another pretty kitten to add to my collection. Quinn ignored him, still staring desperately at her father. I can't believe you, Dad, I really can't, and why not? The bastard Quinn was trying her best not to acknowledge stood up, approaching her rather too slowly. He stooped to her level when he got close enough, reaching down to run his index finger along her jawline. He merely did it to save his life, don't blame that poor puppy. You see, I poisoned him. He had 5 days to live without the cure. The capsule I gave him wasn't exactly the cure, but it can prolong his life for 5 more days. I commend him for giving up his own daughter in exchange for his life, but then again, aren't dogs more loyal to their masters? Quinn yanked her face away from him, trying to remain nonchalant even though fear was bursting through her veins. She couldn't waver, couldn't falter, she must never show her fear, not in front of an enemy. Don't touch me, those disgusting hands, keep them to yourself. The man chuckled. Unlike the other one, this one definitely can bite. She has an attitude, how cute. The other men around him chuckled. Cute indeed, one of them agreed. Quinn hissed at them. She hated this, all of it. Why did this have to happen now when she'd finally chosen herself and was about to be happy? And why did the only blood-related family she had left have to betray her? She'd trusted him, he'd always pretended to be on her side, to care for her. But now she realized that he didn't care because if she'd been in his situation, she'd rather die than to give him up in exchange for her life. Quinn glanced towards him, watching as he slowly crawled closer. Alpha Jake, Delilah, you promised you'd let her go. Well, that was the plan, but not anymore. That Delilah surprisingly belongs to me. What do you mean? You said you wouldn't go back on your word. I said I wouldn't, but I will. She is mine, my mate or rather my whore. I already have a Luna, but I've heard that finding your true mate can calm and strengthen us alphas. But Delilah is shhh, old man, if you talk too much, then I might have to slice off that tongue. Derek's mouth pursed immediately, and he looked away. Shameless, Quinn thought, that man there was not her father, he was but a clone, an impersonator. What do you plan on doing to me? Quinn's question was directed at the Alpha Jake as she now confirmed. He was indeed who she thought he was, the previous Alpha King, the prideful fool Zade had once kicked to the curb. He shrugged. I might do a lot of things to you, but I'm not even sure what I want to do yet. Why did you kidnap me? Zade needs to know his place. He thought he was tricking me, but he was the one who got played. The false news he sent, he laughed. It was the stupidest prank I'd ever seen, that elder he has locked up is one of mine, and he'd predicted all of this. The ceremony, the rain, why do you think all the puzzles fit so closely together? He might have not predicted how this will end, but getting a head start was enough. I managed to get my hands on Zade's most precious possession. It feels nice to have put a stain on that fool's pride. This time when I battle him, he'll lose because your life will be on the line. Quinn shook her head. I bet he won't. Have faith in him all you want, I'll have him groveling at my feet like a loyal dog. Just like your father. After the unsettling conversation with Alpha Jake, Quinn was thrown over her father's back, and the journey to her enemy's pack began. It took a day, but when the journey ended, Quinn quickly realized that the destination wasn't their pack. It seemed to be a temporary lodging with just a few of his men there. Only one building was in this area, and it wasn't big, it looked like an abandoned house. The white paint in some spots seemed like brown, and vines climbed up the dirty walls in abundance. There was grass growing through the wooden stairs, everything just seemed as though it could collapse at any given time. With one pull, she was torn off her father's back and onto the floor. She turned to glare at Alpha Jake who'd pulled her down and he scoffed. What an interesting gaze, he bent to her level, the amusement going cold on his face as he roughly grabbed hers. Fix it, Quinn wiggled out of his grasp and twisted away from him. What are you going to do to me? Where is this? You don't have to worry about that, you'll see soon. He turned to his men. Come on, boys, we don't have much time. His men lifted her, taking her into the sketchy building. Without a doubt, the inside was worse than the outside. There were no furniture, nothing but a room with a silver chain etched against the wall. Cobwebs were everywhere in the ceiling and blood stained the floor, old and dried blood. Was this a torture room? If so, then why wasn't it in the prison on his pack lands? The answer to that wasn't really what worried Quinn, it was the fact that she was here that did. She knew why they brought her here and she knew that pretty soon, some of the blood on the floor would belong to her. A shiver racked down her spine at the thought, and she groaned out in pain when she was harshly thrown against the tiled floor. She looked up at one of the men as he pulled out a knife, using it to free her of the ropes that had held her captive, and Quinn shuffled back and away from them all immediately. Her feet were cramped, and her hands hurt, but even so, she struggled to her feet, staring warily at the bunch of men around her. Stay away from me, well, the kitten is hissing again. Chain her up, Lionel. The man with the knife ran at her, and Quinn clumsily jerked out of the way. She held her hands up, fisting them. If you come near me, I'll hurt you. Everyone laughed, except her father, who stood at the back, trying his best not to look at her. You'll hurt him? You don't even have a wolf, Lionel, let's see what the kitten can do, hey. Lionel rushed at her again, and Quinn ducked, swiftly swiping the knife out of his hand. She shifted behind him, gripping the knife tight as she held it at his neck. The man gasped, holding his hands up in surrender. Turn around, slowly, Quinn told him. He did so, now facing Jake, who seemed more amused than ever. If anybody else comes at me, I'll slice his throat, I really will. Jake chuckled, bumping shoulders with another one of his pack members. Get her, Quinn didn't want to, but she quickly sliced the knife against Lionel's neck, and as he fell to the floor, the other man launched at her. She staggered back, but held her grounds. It was hard to fight right now, her legs were weak, her hands were too, and she was immensely hungry. But she had to show them that she was not afraid, she had to fend for herself, since her own father wouldn't do it for her. Twirling the knife in her grasp, she punctured his stomach, shifting to put another wound in his side. His blood splashed on her face and dirted her dress when she stabbed him 2 more times. The man fell slowly to the floor, still reaching for even when he was dying. Quinn kicked him back and then looked at Jake. "I might not have a wolf," she glanced down at the necklace Zade had given her. "But I am a wolf, a beta wolf. That coward standing behind you had been the one to train me." Jake clapped his hands, grinning devilishly. "Why do you look so hot with blood all over your face? You look like a demon kitten, you got me all hard and hungry for you." Quinn's face twisted in disgust as she held the knife in front of her. "Let me go." "No, never. I want you more than ever now." He looked towards his men. "Out, I'll deal with this one." The men nodded, all filing out, leaving just her father. "You too," Jake told him, and he glanced at Quinn before reluctantly going outside. Alpha Jake moved closer then, and Quinn jutted the knife at him. "Do you think I'm afraid to kill you too?" He shook his head. "I know you're not." His steps circled her, and Quinn's eyes followed him. "But you can't kill me, those men you killed are trained but not completely, they are far from my best men. I just brought them to do some minor things for me, however, the fact that you managed to kill them so easily is truly commendable. You move so fast and professionally. It was memorizing to watch as your pretty, white dress stained with red, is this what love feels like?" He laughed at his own joke, although Quinn didn't find it funny. "Look, I don't care about what you have to say. Let me go and leave Zade alone. He doesn't want any trouble. He'd already beaten you, aren't you afraid to be put to shame twice?" "No, in fact, this time I'm confident, I know I'll win." He finally rushed at her, and Quinn ducked his attack, swinging the knife at him. She missed, and he grabbed her hand, pulling her towards him. "And then I'll keep you as a trophy." Her hand with the knife that he held, he pushed it down his chest. "Do you feel that? It'll go inside of you when I finally win this battle." Quinn's eyes widened as she tried to yank her hand back, but he held too tight. She fisted her left hand and hammered it towards his face, but he caught it, licking his lips. "I'll tell you now, but I'm not shameless enough to claim the trophy before I win." He locked both her hands in one of his, forcing the knife out of it and throwing it across the room. Quinn groaned as he pushed her back against the floor, and she fell into the puddle of blood that leaked from the men she'd killed. She looked towards the knife he'd thrown, but before she could crawl towards it, Jake stepped between the weapon and her. "Don't even think about it, little kitten, you've had enough fun. If you do a round again, I might do a round 2 and end up you." "Josh!" A man ran inside immediately, bowing his head. "Yes, Alpha." "Chain her." Josh grabbed the chains and walked towards her. Quinn shifted back until she was against the wall, and when he grabbed her, she struggled out of his grasp. "Don't touch me, kitten," Jake warned. Quinn fired back. You and all your men, off. His eyes darkened, and he marched over to her, swiping his hand across her face. Quinn's head turned in the direction of the slap, and she could taste the blood in her mouth. She felt dizzy, it hurt. He grabbed her face, twisting it back towards him. Relax and listen to me. I don't want to hurt such a pretty little thing. He let go of her and his man grabbed her feet, draping the chains around them. Next was her hands, and in just seconds, Quinn found that she really had no escape. The silver chains burned Quinn's hands and feet, they made her feel nauseous, creating a fervent fire that kept drifting higher and higher up her body. She knew silver was harmful to werewolves, it weakened them, made it impossible for them to change forms or to even regain the strength it took. But why chain her in them when she didn't even have a wolf? And why exactly was it hurting her? Quinn adjusted herself on the floor, positioning herself on her knees. Since she had no wolf, she wasn't supposed to be in pain, so why? Her teeth gritted, forcing back the whimper that threatened to slip out of her mouth. Jake was watching, waiting to see her waver. Even when she was weak, she should portray that she was strong. Twisting towards him with eyes that held a dangerous grudge, she scoffed. What now? Her breaths were heavy, even as she tried to steady them, and her head was spinning. What will you do to me now? Nothing, I'm just going to leave you here for a few days. The more anxious he gets about your whereabouts, the more advantage I'll have over him. I won't worry to drown him, not knowing if you're alive or dead, will definitely kill him on the inside. There's no mate bond, he won't be able to tell. I wonder though, he stepped closer to her. Will he really come to your rescue? A wolf-less she-wolf will eventually be a worthless Luna. Does he love you enough without the bond? Quinn's heartbeat picked up and he chuckled. Look, even you're having doubts, it's written all over your face. The lack of confidence you have in him. No, Quinn shook her head, despite how much more dizzy the action made her feel. I am confident. If I know nothing else, I know he'll come for me, I know he'll save me. Unlike you, he is a man, he'd never abandoned me in the beginning, what could possibly make you think he'll do it now? Jake laughed, leaning down to grab her face. I really want to see it, the dismay on your face when I have my teeth around your god's neck. All that confidence you have will drain away along with his life. That's something that will never happen. I know he won't lose, he'd beaten you when he had nothing to protect and now that he does, he'll only come harder. You're going to lose your life, you're going to die. A smile slipped lopsidedly across her lips as his grip on her face tightened, a smile filled to the brim with confidence. Cheers to you digging your own grave. He shoved her back and then turned away from her. Delusion is a sickness that you seem to have, but we'll see whose words will come to pass. He walked towards the exit, and it was then that Quinn's dizziness got the best of her. She coughed, heaving up a mouthful of blood. Jake looked back at her, then at her father, who'd suddenly burst through the door. He bowed his head. Alpha, please, he begged. You promised not to hurt her, if you're not going to let go of Delilah, then at least spare Quinn of the pain. The silver, it's hurting her. Jake sighed, patting Derek's shoulder. Isn't a puppy supposed to look up to its master? Beg properly, you dog, on your knees." When her father fell to his knees before that jerk, Quinn wanted to vomit again, to gouge out her eyes. This wasn't a scene she wanted to see. Why betray her and then beg for her life? Quinn didn't understand this. Her father was breaking himself, killing his pride. He was acting like a real dog and Quinn hated it. "Please, I'm begging you, spare her. I know she disrespected you, but punish me instead. Now that's better. Tie her with ropes, Josh, and chain him with the silver instead. We're leaving now. Zade will be showing up on my pack lands soon." Jake shoved her father out of the way as he walked outside. Quinn hated him. There was so much bitterness in her heart for this man. She really hoped Zade would kill him soon. Zade slammed his hand against his desk as he looked at Frederick and Dante. "I hoped that it wouldn't come to this, I really did, but I can't believe Derek Wowell. I don't understand this." "We're not sure of anything." "No, we are." Lorna confirmed it, that which I'd saved and taken in. She was but a child when she came here, and she has the nerve to go against me. What if her father didn't take her to Jake? Why kidnap her and then stray away from the plan? She's in his hands, Dante. And I swear to the goddess I'll kill him myself. Jake, her father, her mother, and if I ever get my hands on her sister, I'll kill her too. I knew something had been wrong. I knew Jake was scheming. I was too anxious. I should have expected this much. What are we going to do? What's your plan? Zade sighed. I need to set the date. He won't keep her on his pack lands since we could raid it. I only hope wherever she is okay. By date, do you mean for the battle? Zade nodded. It's going to happen, Dante. When I ascended to the Alpha King position, I knew people would stand against me for the title. This is one of those moments. It's just that Quinn got caught up in the middle of a battle she can't even fight. Let's just head out, to Jake's pack. That's obviously what he wants. Dante and Frederick nodded, leading the way out of the office. 3 days had passed since Quinn had been taken. Zade had traveled to Geo's pack and confirmed that her father didn't bring her there. Now it was time to visit Jake. He'd already questioned and slaughtered Lorna. The men she'd drugged confessed that she'd been the one who brought them drinks, and Rachel had tracked her down and brought her out of hiding. It seemed her mate was Jake's beta, and he'd been the one to put her up to this. He'd used and abandoned her, and Zade felt no pity when he'd ripped off her neck. She must have felt guilty. If she'd poisoned his men instead of just drugging them, then perhaps she would have gotten away. It was as if she wanted to be caught, as if she wanted to pay for her betrayal. Zade didn't really care though. This was just the beginning. He had so many more heads to rip off. Zade stood at the edge of the borders, watching with narrowed eyes as Jake's men gathered in front of him. This reminded him of the first time he'd stepped upon these lands, proposing a challenge his mother had warned him would be deadly. He'd been confident in his skills back then, and he still was, but his heart felt heavy, complex, and yet it felt so broken at the same time. He wanted to see her, his queen. He honestly and shamelessly missed her. If only he'd been more attentive. If only he'd protected her better. If he had, then none of this would have happened, the mating ceremony would have come to pass, and she'd still be in his arms. But right now, she was out of arm's length, out of reach. He couldn't see her, couldn't feel her, couldn't touch her, and it was driving him crazy. He was so close to losing it, to going on a rampage, but what good would that do? Nobody would look up to him, and it wouldn't give Quinn back to him. He had to be patient, even if he was dying to. He couldn't grab Jake's head and stuff it 6 feet deep beneath this earth. Who would lead him to Quinn then? Hey? Zade sighed when he saw the man approaching from afar. He was an alpha Zade had never looked up to, even when he posed as an alpha above all else. There was just something about him, a selfishness that Zade couldn't look away from. He didn't care about his pack or others. Zade knew for a fact that he only cared about himself. He couldn't be an alpha king, he was too ruined for that, too cold and heartless. But then again, Zade's kind heart was kind of what got him into this situation to begin with. No matter how pitiful that 19-year-old girl had looked, running onto his lands as an escape route from the rogues that were chasing her, he shouldn't have taken her in. When she'd told him she had no home, no family, that she was nothing but a lost Omega, he should have turned her out. Quinn wouldn't have gone missing if he had. People were funny though, no matter how much you've helped them, they could still forget about it and betray you tomorrow. Maybe he should just become selfish too, selfish, cold, and heartless. Maybe he should use people instead of having them use him, just so he never becomes like Quinn, and just so he could protect her from getting hurt once again. Maybe he should change, or rather change back. A ruthless king is a king nonetheless. The men who had gathered in front of him made way for Jake to pass through, and he stopped right in front of Zade, wearing a smirk Zade wanted to rip off his face. "I've been awaiting you, Alpha King. It's an honor to have you here as a guest. Cut off temptation and get to the point, Jake. We all know what you want. I forgot you were a no person." He smirked, gesturing towards Zade. "Let's discuss this in my office, just you, leave your boys." Zade looked back at Frederick and Dante. "Stay here, I'll be back in a second." They nodded, and he followed Jake out of the bushes and to what he confirmed was his office. It was different from his personality. It didn't seem like a space a snake like him would dwell in. Bright colors, ravishing decorations, and in the corner of the room, a young girl, trembling profusely, a young girl he knew all too well. Delilah. She was looking up at him, those eyes pleading for the help he would never give. "Don't mind her, just pretend she isn't here, and just an advice, if you'd like to keep your hands clean, don't touch the desk," she came all over it. Zade's eyes twitched in irritation. "I don't care about you or your adventure stories. I came here because you've taken what belongs to me and I want it back." "You sound so sure, but yes, that feisty kitten is in my hands. She's fun to play with, even when she's afraid, she knows no manners. She stood up to me boldly and even killed 2 of my men. For that, I'll punish her hard at the end of this. I'll have her trembling, just like her sister." Zade clenched his hands and his jaw, trying his best to stop them from clenching around something else, that disgustingly slender neck. "Just tell me what you want, Jake." "You already know what I want a rematch. And you thought the best way to get it was to kidnap my maid instead of kindly asking? When you do this, nobody will look at you the same ever again. If you have to cheat to win, then it wouldn't be a win at all. I don't care about that, just know that I've got the upper hand, just know that I'll win. When? Zade asked him. 5 days from today, 11 p.m. sharp, when the moon shines at its fullest. I'll bring her here. If you win, you can take her back with you, but if you lose, both sisters will belong to me. Why not tonight? I want to get this over with. No, I want you to suffer first, just like she is. Zade tapped his foot against the office tiles, looking off towards the walls. I'll make you sorry, I'll have you apologizing and begging for your life. Just wait. He turned to the door, grabbing onto the knob. No, Zade, it will be you who surrenders, you who dies. Zade pulled the door open. For Quinn, I'll make sure that never happens, and then he walked out the door, kicking the dirt as he marched back the way he came. In 5 days, he'd have Quinn back by his side. He'd make sure of it. 4 days Quinn stayed locked up without water, without food, tied up in the same room as her father. She didn't speak to him, and he didn't make a move to speak to her either. The silence was smothering, it tormented her fiercely throughout the day and throughout the night. He didn't utter an apology, he could barely even look her in the eyes. He was probably ashamed of himself, after slurping down the scrap Jake's men brought them to eat, then of course he should be ashamed. Eating off a plate that had somebody else's left over, Quinn couldn't do it, no matter how hungry she was. She might have been stupid enough to swallow the poison her mother gave her in her foolish attempt to regain her mother's love and attention, but she wasn't going to do this. She'd been confused and she'd withheld a different kind of hunger back then, a hunger for affection. She thought her mother would have pitied her, but it turned out, that woman wasn't even her mother, and this man, he wasn't her father either. This man had to be chained to the head, whatever happened in the past must have happened to his mind. But no matter how Quinn became, she would never be like that. She would never humiliate or betray herself again, nor would she betray Zade. She'd stay on his side even when he was wrong. Quinn twisted towards the door when it was suddenly slammed open, and the men Jake left back to watch both her and her father walked in. It's time to get you guys out of here. One of them unchained her father, who seemed totally weakened out by the silver, and another untied her ropes. This time, they didn't use a knife to cut it. Get up, redhead. Quinn shook her head, scooting back. Where are you going to take me now? If it's Jake's pack, you'd have to kill me first. The man laughed. I might not be able to kill you, but I got permission to knock you out cold. Training was vital, filled to the brim with malicious energy that Zade wanted to point in Jake's direction. Throughout these 5 days, he'd suffered as much as Jake wanted him to. It seemed he was having withdrawal symptoms from not having her around. He had to force himself to eat, and sometimes, he couldn't fall asleep. His heart just wasn't at peace, and right now, as he traveled to Jake's pack with a couple of his warriors behind him, it was anxious. His anticipation seeped higher than those dark clouds in the sky, punishing him continuously. He wanted to see her so bad that it was humanly impossible. There was this immense yearning he couldn't see pass, one that had him seeing red daily. He was so angry, at his family, at his friends, and even at the breeze. Everything triggered him off, but not being able to see her bothered him the most. He was glad his 5 days of punishment were coming to an end, glad tonight this despicable feeling, this feeling he wasn't at all acquainted with was going to go away. Tonight, there would be a vast crowd at Alpha Jake's pack. People would come to watch the battle, people from packs near and far, mostly alphas. They were to be there to witness a new king being born, or to witness the old king securing his crown. It would be a joy to them. Liquor would be served, probably food too, and, of course, bets would be made. Zade didn't care about that though. He was too anxious about seeing his Quinn, about winning her back, that nothing else mattered. Drifting effortlessly through the dark woods, Zade ran past the overgrown trees that were nothing but a blur to him. His speed was unmatched, his paws were digging potently into the moist dirt, and the breeze moved roughly through his black fur. He was close, and upon reaching close enough, that scent filled with distress floated across his nostrils. He could smell her blood too, and his heart immediately dropped as even more speed invaded his run. He skidded past the borders, ignoring everything else as he ran to her. In the midst of the land, he stopped mid-run, and his men stopped behind him. His eyes searched through the large crowd, finding her knelt pitifully against the dirt. She was tied against a tree, her white dress awfully dirty. This was the worst he'd ever seen her. They'd even beaten her to a pulp, put their hands on what belonged to him, and all for what? All for what? For the sake of winning? Zade changed into his human form, slowly approaching her. When he got too close, some of Jake's men stopped him, blocking his path to her. "You can't, we were ordered to." Zade slammed his hand against the annoying mouth that spoke, his claws sinking into the disgusting face. "Shut up and move." He shoved him back and then looked towards the other men with eyes that glowed red. "Move. Now." The men immediately scrambled, and he stooped in front of Quinn. She was barely conscious, one side of her face was swollen and there was blood dripping down her nose. His hand trembled as he reached for her cheek, gently rubbing his finger against the bruise. She flinched away from him and his heart sank even more at that. "Quinn, little red." Quinn blinked at him as though she were in a daze, and then her eyes widened. "Zade." "Yes, Angel." She smiled, a grateful smile. "I knew you'd come." "Of course I'd come. There's no way I wouldn't. I'll get you out of these ropes soon, I have to win first. Just be a little more patient, even though you've already waited long enough." "All right now, break it up, you two. Too much love shouldn't be on what should be a battlefield." Jake tapped Zade's shoulder and Zade shrugged him off, leaning in to kiss Quinn's forehead. "I'll be back in a minute, Angel." He stood up, glaring at Jake. "I'm ready, to make you regret all of this." Jake laughed. "All right, boss, you're the king, get it started." Zade walked past him and into the center of the crowd. He took a deep breath. "As Alpha King, I pledge that the outcome of this battle is what I'll stand by. If I lose, I will disregard my position, and if I am to die, then my title will be handed to my opponent. You may now place your bets." The crowd erupted in chatter then, the men trying to pick a side. "The Alpha King is weak, he's Alpha King, the battle should have been on his pack since he's the one being challenged, and yet he's the one that had to run all the way here, he is a joke. Is the redhead really his mate? What a fool! How could he claim such a mate? I don't even smell a wolf on her, is she human? As Alpha, he has no standard. My bet's on Alpha Jake. He lost the first fight, but he'll win this time. I foresee it. Alpha Jake! Alpha Jake! Alpha Jake! Zade clenched his hands as he tuned out the whispers. They knew not what weakness was, they were but mere fools butchering the wise. The battle will now begin, I will be fighting for what's mine and Jake shall be fighting for what he wants to claim. As Jake stepped in front of him, Zade stretched out his hand, shaking his. I pledge to a fair fight, I hope it'll be reciprocated. Jake nodded. I pledge to be fair too. He gripped Zade's hand tighter, leaning in to whisper into his ear. Well, fair enough. He let go and stepped back, crouching down. Zade mirrored his actions, both their bones cracking as they transformed into their wolves. One fully coated in black fur, and the other had a line of burgundy, running in the midst of the black fur that coated him. It was time. Zade glanced at Quinn who was watching intently. She was probably worried, but she had absolutely no reason to be. He'd said it before, but for her, he'd win. It was time. Zade glanced at Quinn, who was watching intently. She was probably worried, but she had absolutely no reason to be. He'd said it before, but for her, he'd win. With a fierce nod in her direction, he turned to Alpha Jake, who circled him slowly. The dark field seemed bright under the light of the full moon and the wind that slashed through the battle space was cold, and yet it couldn't cool the malicious fire burning in his soul. He positioned himself, him too stalking the field like a mindless predatory, ready to hunt and feast upon his prey. It was as if he was hungry for the taste of Jake's blood, and that's why he was quick to make the first move. His paws dug into the grass beneath them as he launched at Jake, putting speed into his attack. He was anxious and impatient, but his father taught him to never let emotions taint or control one on a battlefield. He had to improvise, observe Jake's movements, and learn to avoid them. Battles such as this required patience. Quinn was tied up, she was hurt, but if he lost, she'd be in a much worse predicament. He needed to keep her out of his head, pretend that this fight wasn't about saving her, but rather about killing a rat who had the guts to go up against him. He felt no fear, he'd been here before, he'd done this before. Zade slid effortlessly against the moist grass when Jake deflected his attack and embarked one of his own. It's been a while since he'd had a real fight, and yet he could feel the adrenaline rushing through his veins, a feeling that did nothing but excite him as he twisted to face Jake again. A growl rumbled through his chest and he crouched defiantly. Jake came at him first this time, eyes flashing to a deeper shade of red as he clashed with Zade. Their teeth clanged violently, both aspiring to gain dominance over the situation, dominance that Zade soon won by powerfully shoving Jake back with his front legs. His claws ripped through Jake's flesh, drawing forth the smell of blood that enticed and motivated Zade. That was the first meaningful blow, and Zade was the one who landed it. Jake growled at him, regaining his balance, then running at him again. Zade could see it, the anger on his face, the vengeance, and Zade wanted to laugh. He was doing it again, blinding his own eyes with pride and rage. As he advanced, Zade pressed one foot forward as an anchor to keep himself steady, his chest vibrating with a low and guttural rumble. Jake collided with him, and he staggered back, but he did not fall, instead he sunk his claws into the dirt, head-butting Jake. The completely black wolf stumbled back, and Zade pounced on him, sending them both rolling against the grass, each trying to be the one to end up on top. The struggle ended with Jake on top, and when he snapped his jaws at Zade's neck, Zade shifted his head, kicking his opponent off with his hind legs. Jake reeled back, but immediately lurched forwards to cage Zade beneath him again. Zade didn't let him. He rolled out the way and back onto his feet, knocking the angry wolf down with the lower part of his body. He licked his lips as he crouched, preparing himself to powerfully pounce on top of Jake, to finally end him, but something thick and yet smooth wrapped around his hind legs, preventing his attack. He glanced down, finding that it was something blacker than the dark night, something that probably only he could see, the tail of a snake that protruded out of the earth. His eyes widened as he tried to pull his hind legs out, but it would not budge. Instead, spikes extended from its body, stabbing into his flesh. He groaned out, even more so when he felt himself being slammed onto his back. The snake tail loosened his foot then, and despite being completely flabbergasted, lost, and confused, Zade tried to focus on the battle. He used his front legs to keep Jake at a friendly distance, to keep him from locking his teeth around his neck, no matter how he maliciously clanged them, but then he saw it. It was a woman standing at the very front of the crowd with a hood over her head. Her face was supposed to be hidden, but Zade could see it. Her skin was deeply tanned and there was a patch of blotched patterns often found on snakes running through the center of her face. Her lips had black lipstick on them. She didn't look normal, and she wasn't, but Zade knew exactly what she was. A shapeshifter, ones that he knew as Venomoons. From a young age, he'd been taught that werewolves were not the only shifters to exist, and Venomoons were one of those shifters to have coexisted alongside them. They mostly walked at night because their powers stemmed from the moon. Full moons benefited them greatly since their powers were stronger then, and right now, this Venomoon was using her powers on him. Zade still couldn't understand this, though. They were said to have gone extinct, hunted by werewolves in the day and used in battles, after which, they were mercilessly killed. However, right now, he was sure that this woman was one of them. The snake tails that had held on to him and the blotched patterns on her face were enough proof. But why was she against him? Why was she helping Jake? Could he perhaps have? Zade groaned out in pain when Jake's teeth sunk into his shoulder, digging deep into his flesh. He struggled beneath him, eyes flashing from the crowd and back into the heart of the battle. His hind legs hurt, they were heavy, hard to move, but he managed to scrape them against Jake's belly, sinking his claws into the vulnerable skin. When Jake recoiled, he shuffled from beneath him, struggling to his feet. Jake started to circle him again, and Zade took the chance to glance back into the crowd. She was gone, but the effects of whatever she'd done to him remained. Their venom were rumored to be poisonous. He wasn't sure how dangerous it was, but it felt as though it was slowly paralyzing him. If he wanted to win, he had to finish this battle quick. One blow, that's all it seemed he had left. He couldn't lose, he wouldn't lose, this wasn't enough to bring him down. He had something to live for, someone to protect, he had to win. Zade clenched his teeth, steadying himself when Jake ran at him, but a scream from the person he was here to protect had him twisting towards them swiftly. Quinn. She was being tortured by Jake's men, the smell of her blood was more prominent now, they were piercing her skin shallowly with knives and claws, agonizing her to agonize him. Zade couldn't let it get to him, he had to pay attention to the fight. He twisted back towards Jake, but it was too late. Jake leaped towards him, knocking him onto his back. He could have escaped, he should have been able to, but the poison prohibited him from moving the lower half of his body, and every cry that left Quinn's lips lashed at his heart, mercilessly weakening him. He had to move, he had to get up, he couldn't lose. With his front legs, he shoved at Jake's chest, but soon all the strength in them faded as well, leaving him completely paralyzed and vulnerable. A howl of pain descended his mouth when Jake's jaws locked around his neck, and all he could do was lay still as blood seeped out of his skin and soaked his own fur. Jake didn't let go, not until he was too weak to retain his wolf form. His bones started to crack, and Jake stepped back, looking down at the pitiful human he'd become. He too changed forms, and Zade watched as he walked towards him, resting an audacious foot on his chest. "You are weak, you're not the Zade I fought before. Love has taken away all your strength." He chuckled. "I should kill you, but I want you to live and suffer. I'll have your title and your mate in my grasp, and you'll have nothing, not even respect." He pressed his foot down into Zade's chest, making him cough blood before he finally removed it. In all of this, Zade's eyes drifting towards Quinn. Her torture had stopped, and yet it had just begun. She was staring at him too, with those teary and yet dangerous green eyes. His queen was no longer his queen anymore. "I am a wolf, I am a wolf, I am a wolf, I am a wolf," Quinn kept repeating the words over and over again in her head, trying to convince herself that she wasn't worthless, that she wasn't at fault. She kept repeating the words, hoping it could save her, save Zade. She kept repeating the words, in agony and in anger, in despair and in resentment. She kept repeating the words because she wanted them to be true. She kept repeating the words because she wanted to do something, anything. Her Zade, her king, was laying half dead on the grass that aligned the fields. She wanted to save him, to somehow find the strength to rip these ropes and then rip out Jake's throat, but she was so worthless. She could barely move. After starving herself and withstanding this awful, public humiliation, she was weak and beaten out. But Zade's condition was worse, even though there was no bond, she felt as though she could feel his pain and understand his emotions. And it did not feel good. So even if she was weak, even if she was worthless, even if it would do her no good, she still kept breathing the useless words mentally. Her eyes were wet with tears, but she was hardly crying for herself, she was crying for him, for Zade. She wanted him to get up, to save himself, but she wanted even more to be the one to save him, to do something. All of this happened because of her, he faltered when she screamed, and furthermore, this fight only became possible because she was kidnapped so easily. Even if he was her father, she shouldn't have trusted him, she should have been wary. However, instead of doing that, she acted stupidly once again. That poison Catherine had given her, why'd she drink it? If she hadn't, then she would have been able to help right now, if she'd just. Quinn hung her head, clenching her hands tight by her side. No, the poison did nothing to her, regardless of everything, she was still a wolf, the poison did not change that. Wolves were strong, these ropes couldn't hold a wolf, especially not a beta one, so why were they hanging onto her? Quinn clenched her hands tighter, looking at Zade before her rancorous, green eyes fixated on Jake. He was wearing a victorious smile, looking into the noisy crowd with a gleaming pride that Quinn wanted to take away from him. She hated him so much. She wanted his head, she wanted to feast upon his heart, to rip it out and place it in Zade's hands. She wanted to ruin him so bad, to bite down into his neck just as he'd beaten down into Zade's. Quinn shuffled eagerly against the rough tree bark. The anger she felt was digging into her, the anger, the despair, the resentment, all the negative emotions were building up inside to a point where it hurt to keep them locked in. A whimper left her lips as she started to whisper the words out loud instead of just thinking them. I am a wolf, I am a wolf, I am a wolf. Each time she repeated them, it got louder and louder, her eyes penetrating on the silver necklace around her neck. I am a wolf, I am a wolf, I said I'm a wolf. I am a wolf. Quinn broke into tears, her scream having everybody turning in her direction and whispering words she didn't even want to hear. Nevertheless, she continued her chant. They weren't her focus, the man laying helplessly on the floor was her mate, she only cared about saving him. Her nails dug into her palms, drawing blood, and then pain, mind-numbing pain drifted like bolts of electricity through her. A scream drifted up her throat, a loud scream that sounded more like a desperate yet determined howl. And then she felt it, a familiar presence. She could smell the overwhelming scent of people she knew and people she didn't, and the overwhelming scent of Zade's blood. She could distinguish the whispers that came from the crowd too, and could feel prominently as her many wounds started to heal. A whimper left her lips when she felt her nails sharpen and elongated, digging so deep into her palms that she had to unclench her hands. One of her bones cracked and then a second later, another one, then another one. The transformation was painful, she screamed through it all, but when she was fully turned, the pain didn't matter anymore. Her white dress and the ropes that had held her were now ripped to pieces beside the tree. Her eyes wandered through the crowd again, finding Jake who was looking at her with flabbergasted eyes. He hadn't believed it when she told him, but he'd better believe it now. She was a wolf, she'd always been a wolf, a beautiful and silver beta wolf. She scraped her paws against the grass, running towards him at full speed. She avoided his men who ran at her, revenge the biggest block in her head. Nothing could stop her, however, one thing did. Zade. She skated to a stop at the edge of the battlefield when he staggered to his feet, holding a hand up that ceased her movements. The skin of his neck was hidden by the blood that covered it, he was injured badly, and yet he was still standing. Quinn squinted at him, and when everybody else turned in his direction, Jake did too. Zade straightened himself then, gritting his teeth as he did so. This is not your fight, Quinn, please stay out of it. I'll win, I'll protect you. Hearing someone's voice in her head sounded so new and loud to her now, but it was okay since it was his. Zade, you, trust me, Quinn swallowed. She was nervous, she was scared, but if he told her to trust him with that pleading look on his face, what else could she do? Slowly, she shrunk back, the pain of the transformation rolling through her again as she changed back into her human form. Jake's men immediately grabbed her, holding her captive. She knew Zade would be disqualified if an outsider invaded the fight. Even if he won, his win wouldn't count, so she... Quinn bit her lip, twisting her head away from the battlefield. She was too anxious to watch. Jake was completely fine, and he wasn't. She doubted he could even transform again. How would he be able to take Jake down? Quinn wanted to question his words, to disregard them, but two kept ringing in her head. Trust me, and she wanted to trust him. Despite everything, she had to trust him. Quinn clenched her hands as she turned back to face them, looking towards Jake, who scoffed at Zade. If I were you, I'd have played dead. Don't tell me you still want to continue in your condition. Zade didn't respond, and Jake dropped to a crouch. I was going to spare you, but since you don't want to be spared, I'll take pleasure in ripping you apart. He changed back into his black wolf and swiftly ran towards Zade, who didn't make a move. He didn't even try to transform. Jake bounded at him and Quinn wanted to close her eyes, to turn away, but she didn't. She watched as Zade stood unmoving until Jake was close enough to kill him. Only then did his body fall, effortlessly gliding against the moist grass. His claws extended from his hands, and as he slid beneath Jake's wolf, he used them to puncture and mar the bottom of his belly with a long wound that started from the top of Jake's chest. Quinn gasped when the rest of the crowd did, her legs that were weak almost giving out beneath her. Jake whimpered as he fell flat on his injured stomach, aspiring to crawl away, but Zade staggered towards him, ripping his claws through the black wolf's side. A howl of pain bellowed through the night, and Jake tossed himself out of Zade's reach. He struggled to his feet, the blood that dripped from beneath him was profuse in amount. The wound was deep. If Zade had aimed a little higher, Jake wouldn't be standing right now, he'd have close to no neck. Zade splashed the blood off his claws as he floundered towards Jake, who growled threateningly at him. The man stalked around him, and every move he made, Zade's eyes followed. He was waiting, anxiously waiting for the attack. Jake rushed towards him once more, this time slower due to the amount of blood he was losing, and Zade planted his feet into the earth as an anchor to keep himself steady. However, Jake still managed to knock him down, Zade falling onto his back and Jake nestling on top of him. Jake went at Zade's neck again, and before he could bite down into it, Zade's hands hung onto his throat, his claws sinking past the fur and into his flesh. The wolf whimpered and Zade growled as he sunk his claws even deeper, then mercilessly ripped them out. He breathed hard as the wolf above him changed back into a man, falling almost lifelessly on top of him. How did you? How? Love didn't weaken me, Jake, it gave me strength. If I had nothing to protect but my stupid pride, I would have stayed down. I didn't get up for myself, I did it for her. Zade groaned as he shoved him off, weakly standing to his feet. Now it's my turn to have mercy on you. He dropped to his knees in front of Jake, who kept coughing up blood, and grabbed his face. I want you to remember this day for the rest of your life. The fact that you cheated not once, but twice, and still lost must have scarred you emotionally. I bet this shame will never allow you to challenge me again. You will live to see me as Alpha King until one of us dies, and I'll still have Quinn by my side. He let go of him and stood up again, staggering over to where Jake's men held Quinn. Let go of her. Your Alpha is unconscious and dying. Save him before there's nothing left to save. The men were reluctant, but as Zade got closer, they let go of Quinn, and she ran onto the fields where Jake was. Jesus Christ, Zade, I was so worried. I didn't know, I was, Zade smiled. I had to keep my word, I promised myself that I'd win, especially since your life was on the line. I couldn't let you protect me, when I'm the one who should be protecting you. His words faded into a whisper, and then he fell against her, unconscious and still bleeding. Quinn hugged around his waist, her eyes finding Frederick and Dante who were running towards them. They took him out of her grasp and gestured towards her. Come, it's time to get you home. The crowd watched as they exited, nobody cheered, nobody uttered a single word. They were all probably just as surprised as Quinn. She couldn't believe it, she'd gotten back what she lost and Zade had kept what belonged to him. The moon goddess must have favored them. After everything and everyone went against her, she still proceeded to win. It took them a day to get to the wounded moon pack, and throughout it, Zade didn't wake up. They'd patched his wounds and taken what Dante said was the fastest route back, and now they were at the pack doctor, waiting for what he had to say about Zade's condition. Quinn was pacing back and forth in the hall, nervous and anxious. She was glad he won, and yet sad about the many injuries he'd sustained. But when she thought about it, he could have been dead, and that was way scarier. Sit down, Quinn, you're making it worse for us by doing that. Quinn turned to Frederick. What am I doing? You're eating yourself. What? Quinn gave him a weird look, and he pointed towards the fingers she had in her mouth. You keep picking at your nails. Oh, Quinn dropped her hand, and took a seat between him and Dante on the bench in the hall. Sorry. He'll be fine, you don't have to worry. Zade has survived way worse than this. Sometimes I wonder why he's always so willing to risk his life. Yeah. Dante nodded. Yeah, there was this time when he was way younger, that went after the biggest boar even though Marcia told him not to. It was our first training after finally getting our wolves, Frederick and I had settled for what we could catch. A squirrel, and Frederick was a little more ambitious because he'd hunted a deer. However, Zade thought those were too small and easy, he wanted a challenge. The boar almost killed him, but he'd still caught it in the end. Although he did get scolded by his mother, his father had praised him. Quinn chuckled. I can see that happening, Marcia must have been angry. She was, he'd been just 10 years old at the time. But with the bravery he possessed, everyone knew he'd be a good alpha, a strong one. He always went for the best, so when he finally took the alpha position from his father, he decided to climb the ranks. You don't know how many stories I could tell you. He went through so much, he had hurt not only others but himself too to get where he's at now. There were times when everyone thought he'd die, but he always surprised us. That's how I know nothing's wrong with him now. He'll be up and running soon. Quinn nodded. I'll believe you, but if you don't mind, those stories, the younger Zade, can I hear more about him? Well, I guess. Dante leaned back against the wall behind him, and Quinn did the same, listening intently as he started to speak again. He was reckless, his life meant absolutely nothing to him, building the pack seemed way more important than his own self. There was this next time, he was 16, rocking a freaking mohawk, and Frederick and I were stupid enough to get a haircut like his." Quinn laughed. "I saw the picture of you guys, he's so embarrassed about it, but it was cute." "Come on, all three of us were ugly." "We were," Frederick confirmed. "Tell her about the time when he got," and so, they told her a lot of things, many stories that made her laugh until her eyes watered. When Marcia and Nicholas arrived, they joined in, but everybody stood silent when the doctor walked down the hall towards them. "He'll be fine. He's in a temporary coma right now. His wounds are healing slower than usual because he'd overexerted himself, nothing he hadn't done before. He'll probably wake up in a day or two, or even before that. Come with me, Quinn, Dante told me to examine you when I'm done with him." Quinn looked at Dante and then down at herself. "But I'm fine, so why?" "Just go, Quinn, you'd overexerted yourself too. It's just a checkup." The doctor walked off, and Quinn reluctantly followed after him. He took her to a different room from the one Zade was in, and he'd examined her like he said he would. "You seem fine, it's merely a theory, but you probably couldn't feel your wolf because it had blocked itself off. Just like Zade, it had fallen into a temporary coma in order to protect itself from the poison you'd ingested. It had withstood what it could, and the rest fell upon you. Were you sick the first few days after losing contact with your wolf?" Quinn nodded. "I passed out and only woke up after 6 days, according to my father. I had a constant headache and a fever too." "Then I believe I am right. Your wolf is blessed to have known what to do in such a situation. It risked your life to save its, but it probably knew you wouldn't die. I don't believe your wolf is fully recovered, since I'm sure it had taken in most of the poison. Go out on short runs to strengthen it and check back with me in a week." Quinn shuffled off the hospital bed. "I'll do that, thanks." She walked to the door, but then stopped. "Can I go see Zade? Can I stay with him?" "Yes, I believe it'd be best if you do." After hearing that, Quinn left the room, walking back down the hall to where everyone still was. Marcia was the first to approach her. "What did he say?" Quinn shrugged. "He said my wolf is okay, but isn't fully recovered yet. I'll have to check back with him in a week." Marcia hugged her. "I'm happy you got your wolf back, you don't know how proud I am, of both of you. You two have made quite an impact, everyone is talking about how you and Zade went all out to save each other. I wish I'd been there to see it, the beautiful silver wolf the alphas keep talking about." Quinn's cheeks reddened. I'll show you tomorrow, we could go on a run." Marcia pulled back and smiled. "I'd like that, and you're so pretty," she mentioned randomly. Nick grabbed her shoulders and chuckled. "I think you're making her shy, Marcia." "Yeah, she gets like that every time I say it." "I don't," Quinn choked out. "Looking at you now, I can tell you do." Dante interjected. "I said I don't." Everybody chuckled at that, not at all coming to an agreement with her. "We're all happy for you and Zade," Marcia then said again. Quinn smiled. "Thanks, for actually caring." She twisted away from them, knowing her cheeks were only going to get redder. "I'm going to Zade, the doctor told me to stay with him. I probably won't be back tonight." All right, we'll come by in the morning. Quinn waved at them as she walked towards the room Zade was in. She could feel the joy radiating off of them, the pride. They really were genuinely happy for her, and if it were her own family, this would be a reason for them to hate and hurt her more. Quinn wiped her cheeks when tears streamed down them. Why couldn't she have been given a family like this? Well, she supposed since they were Zade's family, they could be considered hers too. A new family, a new beginning. She stopped at the door to Zade's room, opening it and stepping inside. He was laying motionlessly on the bed, his neck and left shoulder heavily bandaged. She'd never seen him like this, he'd always appeared too strong to be sick. But now that she had, she realized that everyone could falter, and not just her. She really hoped he'd wake up soon though. Quinn walked closer until she settled over him. Everything felt different now, better. It was an honor to be able to smell this captivating scent again, petrichor and apricot, this beautiful scent that belonged to him. The mate bond she never had the luxury of feeling, she could feel it now, a feeling that kept coercing her to draw nearer, to touch him. Quinn drew for the only chair in the room, positioning it the closest it could get to his bed, and then she sat down, intertwining her hand with his. The sparks she felt were stronger now, and she knew it was because of the mark he'd left on her neck, that and the fact that Geo wasn't here to confuse her wolf anymore. She saw him as her mate now, this man that she was conscious she'd belong to for the rest of her life. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.